I have brought peace to the Republic.
The release of Obi-Wan Kenobi has recently been released to the delight of Star Wars fans everywhere. With Obi-Wan being heavily featured in both the original trilogy as well as the prequels, it's obvious that the series would contain nods to both of these series. However, many fans have wondered if the Obi-Wan series would contain any references to the most recent Star Wars films. Fans will be delighted to know this series does, just more subtly and thematically than you might expect. What are the ties between Obi-Wan and the Skywalker trilogy? Stick around to the end to find out. Also, stay tuned to see our ranking of Anakin's different Force ghosts in Return of the Jedi. First up, what is the debate on Anakin's Force ghost? In the re-edits of the original Star Wars trilogy, the numerous changes made by George Lucas are a long-standing topic of debate in the Star Wars community. These range from subtle changes, such as Ian McDiarmid appearing as Emperor Palpatine in The Emperor Strikes Back, to not-so-subtle changes like Hayden Christensen appearing as Anakin's ghost in Return of the Jedi. Because of how controversial it was, the latter is our subject of discussion today. The scene where Anakin's ghost appears takes place in one of the very final scenes of Return of the Jedi. In this scene, Luke cremates the remains of his father while everyone is celebrating the epic defeat of the Empire. In this scene, the Force ghosts of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda appear beside Luke before his father Anakin appears beside him as well. In the original film, the ghost was played by Sebastian Shaw, who played the Anakin revealed behind the Darth Vader mask in the original films. In the 2004 re-edits, Shaw was replaced by Hayden Christensen, to the criticism of Star Wars fans en masse. Today, we're going to be re-examining this choice by Lucas and deciding once and for all if he made the right call.
Is it possible to learn this power?
So, what is the argument for Hayden Christensen's Force Ghost? George Lucas's entire reasoning for the prequel trilogy was to give fans another series of films that they could then watch in chronological order. This is why, for example, the identity of Palpatine was kept a secret throughout the release of the prequels, even though many fans knew exactly what the outcome would be. With the original trilogy re-edited in 2004, Lucas wanted consistency between his original films and the new ones being released. Especially to older fans, seeing Hayden Christensen appear in the original films was odd, to say the least. With that being said, it does make sense in terms of the film's narrative. It is explained by Obi-Wan that Anakin Skywalker ceased to exist the moment Darth Vader came into the world. So, in a way, Anakin never existed beyond his appearance as Hayden Christensen.
Good, Anakin, good. Kill him.
Therefore, when Darth Vader dies in Return of the Jedi, it makes sense his ghost would revert to the appearance of his younger self. This solidifies the idea that Darth Vader and Anakin are not one and the same, and that the horrible things that Vader did cannot be attached to Anakin. On the other hand, what's the argument for Sebastian Shaw's Force Ghost? While the argument for Hayden Christensen as the Force Ghost certainly makes sense, this did not make it any more jarring for fans of the original trilogy. Sebastian Shaw is only seen as Anakin in Return of the Jedi for a brief moment on the Death Star before passing away. Despite this, there was no confusion as to who the ghost next to Obi-Wan and Yoda ever was. The lack of complaints over Shaw appearing in the role makes the change seem that much more strange. With Yoda and Obi-Wan both taking on their appearances at the time of their death, why didn't Anakin?
Goodbye, Darth.
Especially when you consider the story arc of Darth Vader. In many ways, the character does revert to Anakin by helping Luke in the series' climactic scene. This is all capped by the fact that Hayden Christensen just looks awkward in his appearance as the ghost. This is because Lucas decided not to film new footage of Christensen to use in the appearance. Instead, he decided to take footage of the actor from Revenge of the Sith's promotional material. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why Christensen looks so out of place in the scene. With all that, here's why we think Hayden Christensen is better. Although the debate rages on to this day, it has certainly cooled down from when it began in 2004, and most fans have come to terms with Hayden Christensen's insertion into the original trilogy. When the prequels were first released, many die-hard Star Wars fans hated them, so it makes sense they would hate characters from these films being inserted into their beloved original trilogy. Over the past 2 decades, however, the prequels have begun to be looked upon in a much fonder light. At this point, it is widely accepted that Christensen is the true Anakin, as he's the actor who played the role for the longest. Despite his usually awkward acting in the role, he is still somewhat beloved in the Star Wars fandom. Although there is certainly room to criticize Christensen's appearance in Return of the Jedi, it does inarguably connect the prequels to the original trilogy, which was always George Lucas's goal in the first place. Christensen is ultimately the better Force Ghost because of how his appearance truly connects the 2 trilogies, making them feel less like separate franchises. Speaking of this connection, how does Obi-Wan Kenobi reveal a thread that runs through all the Star Wars films? Stick around to find out.
You want to meet him?
Moving on, where does the connection between Obi-Wan and the Rise of Skywalker begin? The theme revealed in Obi-Wan runs back to the very beginning of the Star Wars story, chronologically that is, in The Phantom Menace. This is the youngest appearance of Obi-Wan in the entire Star Wars series, and also the first film where Anakin is introduced. In the film, Anakin has a telling quote that runs through the rest of the films in the entire franchise. This quote is delivered to his mother at dinner when he says, "Mom, you said the biggest problem in this universe is that nobody helps each other." This quote reveals much of the difference between the Jedi and the Sith. It shows that the central conflict in the Star Wars universe is the battle between selfishness and altruism. So, how did this theme get explored later in the series? So, what other moments in the Star Wars universe feature this theme? Aside from Anakin's quote in The Phantom Menace, this theme has been explored multiple times throughout the Star Wars films. One prime example is when Anakin decides to help his son defeat the Emperor in the climactic scene in Return of the Jedi. Another more recent example came towards the end of The Rise of Skywalker. In the film, it appears that the rebels have ultimately been defeated by the Final Order. This is until Lando Calrissian appears with thousands of ships behind him to assist the rebels. It is then revealed that these ships are not rebel vessels, but just regular people. This is one of the prime examples of the theme in the entire series. Regular people can become heroes by being selfless.
Well, if you ever need my help again, you know where to find me.
Finally, how is the theme demonstrated in Obi-Wan? Obi-Wan Kenobi does a good job of exploring this theme further through the turmoil Obi-Wan goes through in the series. This is explored in the very first episode of the series through Obi-Wan's initial reluctance to rescue Leia. This episode sees him forgetting the Jedi's code, and people die because of his selfishness. This theme carries on throughout the series.
But we must be careful.
Exemplified by Obi-Wan's interaction with a drug dealer who opposes the Jedi code of selflessness in almost every way imaginable. Fun fact, this drug dealer is played by Ewan McGregor's real-life daughter. This character confronts Obi-Wan with a self-destructive view of the world that forces him to reckon with his worldview. As this series moves on, Obi-Wan becomes increasingly paranoid and untrusting, thus separating him even further from the Jedi's code of helping one another. The main theme running through the series is whether or not Obi-Wan is willing to overcome his fear and selfishness to trust the people around him to help out with his cause. The show features many rebels in spirit, such as Tala and Roken, who serve as characters that point Obi-Wan toward his destiny as one of the greatest heroes in the entire Star Wars universe. It is clear in this series that Obi-Wan is left damaged by his betrayal from Anakin in the prequels, and this series is his journey back to the true Jedi way. As we know, Obi-Wan eventually accepts his destiny and becomes one of the integral parts of the original trilogy. Although Obi-Wan doesn't necessarily contain many overt references to the newest Star Wars films, what it does contain is the thematic symmetry that ties all Star Wars films together. Have you been watching the new Obi-Wan series? What do you think of the show and McGregor's reprisal of his role as Obi-Wan? Also, who's your favorite Force ghost? Do you agree with us that Hayden Christensen's appearance makes more sense? Or are you a fan of Sebastian Shaw? Let us know all your thoughts on Star Wars in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.